Hello, and welcome to Overlooked Headlines. We're the podcast designed to share headlines from America and around the world that have been disregarded or overlooked, but are critical to our lives and well-being. It's our mission to inform with the headlines and then inspire through biblical words, which we call His Lines, that once heard and applied will help to strengthen our faith in God as we navigate this journey called life. Now, here's the host of Overlooked Headlines, Jeff Bass.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Overlooked Headlines. I'm Jeff Bass. Here's our headline breakdown. America extremely vulnerable to cyber calamity. Researchers say depopulation and rapidly slowing birth rates are healthier for the environment. And of course, our top headline is 6G revolution begins. We always close with His Lines. Here's our first headline. America extremely vulnerable to cyber calamity. As most people are aware, recently there was a sweeping internet outage across the U.S., which led to a failure in roughly 8.5 million Microsoft Windows devices. Disruptions included banks, airline networks, emergency call centers, online retailers, and numerous corporate networks. The outage is estimated to have caused at least $5.4 billion in profit losses, and it only lasted about a day. The alleged cause of the breakdown was CrowdStrike, a cybersecurity company that uses large-scale data updates to Microsoft Windows networks to counter cyber threats. Instead, the company uploaded bugged code and caused a cascading outage. Macs and Linux machines were not affected. The scale of the shutdown, however, was immense. Over 25% of Fortune 500 companies were frozen. Travel essentially stopped. Business transactions for many companies ceased. And some banks, including Bank of America, Capital One, Chase, TD Bank, and Wells Fargo, could not function, and customers could not access their accounts. The event was reminiscent of the panic surrounding the Y2K scare 25 years ago. However, U.S. systems were definitely not digitized to an extent great enough to cause a disaster should there be an internet crash or a software crash. But today, things are very different. Nearly every sector of the American and European economy and many utilities are directly dependent on a functioning internet. The fear that prevailed during Y2K was unrealistic back in 1999. Now, though, it makes perfect sense. First and foremost, there is the potential for random error like the CrowdStrike incident. Then there's the potential for a foreign attack on U.S. and European digital infrastructure. And then there's the potential for a false flag event blamed on random error or a foreign government in order to foment war or economic collapse. In June of 2021, there was a very interesting event that was barely covered by the corporate media called the Fastly outage. This was an internet outage that led to large swaths of the web going completely dark, including a number of mainstream news sites, including Amazon, eBay, Twitch, Reddit, and more. A host of government websites also went down. Now, all this happened when content delivery network known as CDN company Fastly experienced what's called a bug. Although Amazon had its website back online within 20 minutes, the brief outage cost the company over $5.5 million in sales. Imagine if someone wanted to deliberately damage internet functions for an extended period of time. The results would be catastrophic. With supply chains completely dependent on just-in-time freight deliveries, and those deliveries dependent on efficient digital communications and payments between retailers and manufacturers, a web-down scenario for more than a few days will cause an immediate loss of consumer goods. Stores would empty within hours should the public realize that new shipments might not arrive for a long time. Now, keep in mind, this not even accounting for payment processing between customers and retailers. If that shuts down, then all sales shut down. then whatever food you have left in your pantry or in your storage is what you will have to live on until the problem is fixed, if it is ever fixed. Most believe, however, a cyber attack is the next most likely global disaster. But what if the next ploy is a complete shutdown of the web and a fast-moving financial collapse? Figuring out who triggered the breakdown would be nearly impossible. The people who used to claim it's doom-mongering to examine the threat of cyber attacks have been proven utterly wrong. So, prepare accordingly, and remember that technological dependency is a double-edged sword. Now, our second headline. Researchers say depopulation and rapidly slowing birth rates are healthier for the environment. With population growth dramatically in free fall, especially ever since 2020, some researchers argue that this may overall be a net positive for the environment and help in the fight against climate change. In a piece first published in The Conversation, authors explain that even though the world population will continue to grow, the pace is noticeably slowing down. The researchers acknowledged calls by some for years that depopulation is needed and that they would either be auto-corrected by famines and natural occurrences or through forcible birth control. They went on to say that for 50 years, some environmentalists have tried to save the environment by cutting global population growth. In 1968, the population bomb forecast massive famines and called for large-scale birth control. Now, we face a very different reality of population growth, which is slowing without population control, and wealthy country populations are falling, triggering frantic but largely ineffective efforts to encourage more children. What might a falling global population mean for the environment, you might ask? Well, they go on to say that for much of Europe, North America, and some of Northern Asia, depopulation has been underway for decades. Fertility rates have fallen steadily over the past 70 years and have stayed low, while longer life expectancies mean numbers of very old people over 80 will double in these regions within 25 years. However, the authors say fewer of us means a reprieve for nature, right? No, it's not that simple, they say. They argue that even though birth rates are sliding, people are still living longer and putting more money and resources to buttress that old population could offset declines from falling populations. And as more countries get wealthier and healthier, but with fewer children, it's likely more of the global population will become higher emitters, they say. Nevertheless, the authors conclude these factors aside, it's possible a falling global population could cut overall consumption and reduce pressure on the natural environment. It's very much an open question whether falling populations will reduce pressure on the natural world, unless we also cut emissions and change consumption patterns in developed countries. This is by no means guaranteed, they say. Also, company Morgan Stanley believes that roughly 45% of women will be single and childless by 2030. Stay where you are. I've got more overlooked headlines.
Still to come, our top headline. And don't miss his lines right here on Overlooked Headlines.
Now, here's our top headline. 6G revolution begins. Researchers achieve record-breaking data speeds. And this comes from Japan. The road to 6G wireless networks just got a little smoother. Scientists have made a significant leap forward in terahertz technology, potentially revolutionizing how we communicate in the future. An international team has developed a tiny silicon device that could double the capacity of wireless networks, bringing us closer to the promise of 6G and beyond. Imagine a world where you could download an entire season of your favorite shows in seconds, or where virtual reality feels as real as, well, reality. This is what scientists believe terahertz technology can potentially bring to the world. Their work is published in the journal Laser and Photonics Review. This tiny marvel, which is a silicon chip smaller than a grain of rice, operates in a part of the electromagnetic spectrum that most of us have never heard of, the terahertz range. Think of the electromagnetic spectrum as a vast highway of information. We're currently cruising along in the relatively slow lanes of 4G and 5G. However, terahertz technology, that's the express lane, promising speeds that make our current networks look like horse-drawn carriages in comparison. Terahertz waves occupy a sweet spot in the electromagnetic spectrum between microwaves and infrared light. They've long been seen as a promising frontier for wireless communication because they can carry vast amounts of data. However, harnessing this potential has been challenging due to technical limitations. The researchers' new device, called a polarization multiplexer, tackles one of the key hurdles in terahertz communication, efficiently managing different polarizations of terahertz waves. At the heart of this innovation is a compact silicon chip measuring just a few millimeters across. Despite its small size, this chip can separate and combine terahertz waves with different polarizations with remarkable efficiency. Some say it's like having a tiny, incredibly precise sorting machine for light waves. To put the potential of this technology into perspective, the researchers conducted several real-world tests. In one demonstration, they used their device to transmit two separate high-definition video streams simultaneously over a terahertz link. This showcases the technology's ability to handle multiple data streams at once, effectively doubling the amount of information that can be sent over a single channel. In more advanced tests, however, they pushed the limits of data transmission speed using a technique they call on-off keying. They achieved error-free data rates of up to 64 gigabytes per second. When they employed a more complex modulation scheme, they reached staggering data rates of up to 190 gigabits per second. That's roughly equivalent to downloading 24 gigabytes or about 6 high-definition movies in a single second. Wow. It's a staggering leap from current wireless technologies. The implications of this technology stretch far beyond faster Netflix downloads. We're talking about advancements that could revolutionize augmented reality, enable seamless remote surgery, or even create virtual worlds so immersive you might forget they're not real. The best part, this isn't some far-off dream. We anticipate that within the next 1 to 2 years, researchers says, they will begin to explore new applications and refine the technology. So, while you might not find a terahertz chip in your next smartphone upgrade, don't be surprised if, in the not too distant future, you're streaming holographic video calls or controlling smart devices with your mind. The terahertz revolution is coming, and it's bringing a future that's faster, more connected, and more exciting than we ever imagined. So, our question for you is, are you ready to embrace 6G high-speed technology? Leave us your comments. We want to know. Don't move. His lines are coming up.
Hey, if you're enjoying this episode, then we'll think you'll love connecting with us on our social media platforms as well, because we post frequent news bites, tips, and alerts to keep you informed and inspired. Now, Let's get back to more overlooked headlines with Jeff Bass.
Now it's time for His Lines, where we take a closer look at these headlines from a biblical perspective taken from the Bible, which is God's Word. Our top headline today was on the big changes that are coming in high-speed technology as it relates to 6G. You know, many people have a lot to say, positive and negative, about change. Listen to some of these quotes. Heraclitus says, "Nothing endures but change." Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes says, "Know what's weird? Day by day, nothing seems to change, but pretty soon, everything is different." There's a Portuguese proverb that says, "Change yourself, change your fortunes." And an unknown author said, "In order to change, we must be sick and tired of being sick and tired." Having heard what man says about change, let's look at change now from a biblical perspective. "I, the Lord, never change," God says in Malachi chapter 3, verse 6. So that's our starting point. You see, for God to change would mean that he either becomes better or worse. And God is ultimate perfection. He can't change because he can't be better than he already is, and he can't fail or become less than perfect. So he can't become worse than he is. God's attribute of never changing is shown in James 1, verse 17, which reads, "But whatever is good and perfect comes to us from God, the creator of all light, and he shines forever," here it is, "without change or shadow." Even though people change, God never changes. There are people who believe that God's word must change or adapt to keep up with the times. However, Jesus strongly validated the scriptures and called them truth in John 17:17. So, if God's character does not change, then his word does not change. His truth, standards, and way of salvation will never change. We, however, changeable human beings, don't have the power or authority to change God's word, and we're foolish if we try. In conclusion, change depends on the direction the change takes us. Pretending we can change God or his word to fit into our box or preference is very dangerous and only leads to destruction. That's His Lines. For Overlooked Headlines, I'm Jeff Bass, keeping you informed and inspired. Blessings upon you.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you've been informed and inspired. Like us, tell a friend, and connect with us via Facebook, YouTube, or email us at neveroverlooked@gmail.com. That's neveroverlooked@gmail.com. Check us out next time on Overlooked Headlines with Jeff Bass.